You think you're a good person, intelligent, self-aware, maybe even evolved beyond the petty dramas that trap everyone else. You're wrong. And Fyodor Dostoevsky, a man who stood before a firing squad, got spared at the last second, then spent 4 years in a Siberian labor camp, understood exactly why you're lying to yourself. This wasn't some academic theorizing from a comfortable study. Dostoevsky gambled away his money, begged in European streets, and stared directly into human evil without blinking. What he discovered will dismantle everything you believe about yourself. And if you're honest, something in you already knows it's true. Born in the 19th century Tsarist Russia, Dostoevsky witnessed brutal injustice firsthand. But instead of breaking, he transformed suffering into a mirror that reveals what most people spend their lives running from. His novels, Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, The Idiot, Notes from the Underground, don't just tell stories, they expose the lies you tell yourself to sleep at night. Dostoevsky pioneered existentialism before it had a name, exploring themes that still haunt us: the meaning of life, the constancy of suffering, the war between reason and emotion, and the evil hiding behind your civilized mask. His work influenced Nietzsche, Sartre, and every thinker who dared ask questions everyone else was too afraid to confront. These aren't the 10 lessons you want to hear. They're the 10 truths you need, and the resistance you're already feeling, that's exactly where we're going. Lesson number 1. Your intelligence is the prison you built for yourself. In Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky gives us Rodin Raskolnikov, a philosophy student convinced his intellectual superiority exempts him from normal morality. He's brilliant, rational, and utterly certain that engaging with ordinary people wastes his precious time. Sound familiar? You're the person who mentally corrects people's grammar while they're talking. You interrupt with "actually" before they finish their sentence. You select friends based on their credentials, not their character. When someone doesn't understand something you do, you feel secretly superior rather than genuinely helpful. This is your shadow speaking. Carl Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols that the shadow contains the qualities we reject in ourselves. But here's the twist. Raskolnikov's pride leads him to murder an elderly pawnbroker. Not for money, not in passion, but because he rationally concludes she's a parasite, and his superior intellect should permit him to eliminate her. Dostoevsky isn't just diagnosing intellectuals, he's diagnosing you. That belief that understanding something makes you better than those who don't. The isolation that comes from looking down instead of across. The bone-deep loneliness you can't quite name. But here's where everything you believe breaks down. Raskolnikov's salvation comes through connection, compassion, and love, the very things he dismissed as weakness. Human worth isn't determined by intelligence or achievement. The traits you reject as weakness are exactly what you need most. Dostoevsky wrote that immense pride is not a sign of dignity, and society tells you intelligence equals superiority. Society is lying to you. Your niceness to less intelligent people isn't virtue, it's condescension wearing a mask. When you explain things, are you helping them understand or proving you already know? When you spend time with someone, are you connecting or slumming? How many times this week did you mentally rank yourself above someone? Every time you did, you chose superiority over connection. You imprisoned yourself in a cell made entirely of your own arrogance. This is where everything breaks down. Treat knowledge as a tool for connection, not separation. When someone doesn't know what you do, teach them from beside, not above. When someone knows what you don't, get curious instead of defensive. Stop measuring human worth by IQ and start recognizing that every person contains knowledge you lack. The intellectual who isolates themselves dies alone, wondering why nobody came to the funeral. The one who builds bridges gets both knowledge and love. Choose carefully. Lesson number 2, the applause you're chasing is turning you into someone you'll hate. Raskolnikov doesn't just want knowledge, he wants admiration for having it. He pursues greatness because great people get praised, and he craves that validation like a drug. You're doing the same thing right now, posting your achievements on LinkedIn not because you're proud, but because you need the likes, taking jobs that look impressive rather than fulfilling, dating people who elevate your status instead of understanding your soul, building a life that photographs well but feels empty. Nietzsche, drawing from Dostoevsky, say, develop this into his Übermensch concept in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. True greatness lets you experience more of life itself, not collect more applause. The pursuit of knowledge becomes either a personal hunger or a status game. One has no limits, the other is hollow no matter how many followers you get. And this is the part you won't want to hear. How many of your goals exist because you genuinely want them versus because achieving them makes others think highly of you? How much of your self-improvement is actually self-betrayal, becoming who Instagram tells you to be instead of who you are? You're not building a life, you're building a performance. And you're so good at performing that you've forgotten there's supposed to be a real person underneath. When you better yourself for approval, you give up freedom for external validation. You become a puppet dancing to invisible strings, forever anxious about audience reaction, never satisfied because the applause never feels like enough. Think about the last thing you accomplished. Did you feel genuinely fulfilled, or did you immediately start thinking about how to leverage it for more recognition? Your shadow knows the answer. Jung argues in The Undiscovered Self that the persona, your social mask, becomes dangerous when you mistake it for your true self. You've optimized yourself for external metrics while the real you suffocates underneath. Dostoevsky believed that to go wrong in one's own way is better than to go right in someone else's. This is where everything breaks down. Look inward for your goals, then decide what you need to do to reach them. Plan growth according to what you actually want, not what your LinkedIn feed says success should look like. The opposite, mimicking others without considering if it would make you happy, is the fast track to a life that looks impressive but feels like dying slowly. Stop performing. Start living. The version of you that emerges when you stop seeking approval might be less impressive to others but infinitely more alive. Subscribe if you'd rather be real than liked. Lesson number 3, your overthinking is killing everything real in your life. In The Idiot, Prince Mishkin never drowns in overthinking despite his wisdom. He lives with open-hearted simplicity, meeting life directly. The aristocrats around him think he's an idiot. They're too busy playing political games, calculating social advantage, protecting egos with elaborate defenses. You're those aristocrats. Mishkin is what you've lost. You're the person who analyzes every text message before sending it, who replays conversations for hours, wondering what people really meant, who plans the future so obsessively you miss what's happening now, who can't watch a movie without checking your phone because being present feels uncomfortable. Your mind constructs filters, preventing you from living in the moment. You have prejudices about certain types of people that stop genuine connections. You're constantly anxious about what others think, so you never do what you actually want. You're so busy judging experience through mental frameworks that you forget to actually experience anything. Now watch what happens when this belief meets reality. The truly wise have more in common with simple fools than with prideful intellectuals performing their intelligence. Why? Both the wise and the fool are present. Both experience life directly. Only the performing intellectual is trapped in their head, missing everything real. Dostoevsky observed that the wisest of all, in his opinion, is he who can, if only once a month, call himself a fool. How many moments did you miss today because you were thinking about yesterday or planning tomorrow? When's the last time you felt truly present, not analyzing, not judging, not planning, just alive in the moment? This connects to Jung's concept of individuation in psychology and alchemy. Becoming whole requires integrating the parts of yourself your conscious mind rejects. Your overthinking isn't wisdom, it's defense, against feeling, against vulnerability, against life itself. Raskolnikov's transformation in Crime and Punishment comes when he learns to embrace what life offers instead of constantly judging it through mental filters. His liberation arrives only when thinking stops and living begins. This is where everything breaks down. That voice in your head offering constant commentary, judgment, analysis, it's not protecting you. It's imprisoning you. Real intelligence knows when to shut up and just experience. Real wisdom knows that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is call yourself a fool and let life be exactly what it is. Your overthinking isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you dead while your heart still beats. Lesson number 4. Your gut knows what your brain is too arrogant to admit. Raskolnikov felt murdering the pawnbroker was wrong. His gut screamed not to do it. But his brilliant mind constructed an airtight logical argument for why killing her was morally necessary. So he ignored his emotions and acted on pure reason. The aftermath? Psychological torment so intense it nearly destroys him in Part 3, Chapter 6 of Crime and Punishment. His emotions were right. His reason was catastrophically wrong. You've done this too. Maybe not murder, but you've overridden your gut with logic and regretted it. You stayed in a relationship your body told you to leave because on paper they were perfect. You took a job that felt wrong but looked good on your resume. You said yes when everything in you screamed no because you couldn't rationally justify the feeling. How many times have you betrayed yourself this month? Sent the email that felt wrong but seemed necessary? Smiled and nodded when you wanted to scream, rationalized doing something that made your stomach turn. Society worships logic and dismisses emotion as primitive, unreliable, something to overcome through rational thought. Dostoevsky saw through this delusion over a century ago. Emotions, what we call gut instinct, contain intelligence rationality cannot access. Dostoevsky warned that it takes something more than intelligence to act intelligently. And this is the part you won't want to hear. The most catastrophically wrong decisions you'll ever make will feel perfectly logical at the time. The people who cause the most damage aren't emotional wrecks acting on impulse. They're intelligent individuals who've convinced themselves their reason is infallible, who've learned to override emotional wisdom in service of logical arguments. Schopenhauer wrote in On the Freedom of the Will that intellect is merely the servant of will. Our rational mind constructs justifications for what we're already inclined to do. Your logic isn't neutral. It's a lawyer arguing the case your shadow already decided. Neither rationality nor emotion represents absolute truth. Both give different information. Sometimes emotional intelligence is more insightful than logical analysis, but that doesn't mean always follow your gut either. This is where everything breaks down. When reason and emotion conflict, don't automatically trust whichever one you've been trained to favor. Investigate. Understand why the unease exists. Examine whether your rational justification is genuinely sound or just clever. Then choose a path integrating both forms of intelligence. Think about the last time you did something that felt wrong but seemed logically justifiable. How did that turn out? Your gut exists for a reason. It processes information your conscious mind cannot see. Stop treating emotions as bugs to be fixed. They're features your arrogance refuses to acknowledge. Lesson number 5. The meaning you're searching for is blinding you to the life right in front of you. Dostoevsky stood before a firing squad, moments from death, when suddenly he was pardoned and sent to a Siberian labor camp. Instead of breaking him, it revealed what changes everything. Most people obsess over life's meaning, reading books, developing theories, searching for some grand purpose that will finally make existence make sense. But here's where everything you believe breaks down. That search is the problem. Living life at its fullest, no matter how or where, is the only meaning you need. Even in Siberia's desolate misery, even in brutal labor camp reality, Dostoevsky's desire to live never diminished. As he wrote in Notes from the Underground, that desolate existence didn't take away his appeal to live. It intensified it. You're doing the opposite right now. You're so focused on achieving the next milestone that you forget to actually experience the journey. You tell yourself you'll be happy when you get the promotion, the relationship, the house, the body. But when you get there, the goalposts move. Because you've trained yourself to live in the future instead of now. How many moments today did you actually experience versus spend lost in planning or regret? When's the last time you felt genuinely present, not working towards something, not recovering from something, just alive? You scroll through your phone at dinner with friends, simultaneously present and completely absent. You're in the gym, but thinking about work. You're at work, but thinking about the weekend. You're never actually anywhere because you're always somewhere else in your mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Book 2 of Meditations to confine yourself to the present, but you can't because you've convinced yourself the present doesn't matter, only achieving the future you've planned. Dostoevsky declared that life is everywhere. Life is in us ourselves, not outside. To be a human being among people and to remain one forever, no matter in what circumstances, not to grow despondent and not to lose heart. That's what life is all about. This is where everything breaks down. Accepting life as it is and trying to make it better aren't mutually exclusive. You can work toward career success while also being okay with failure. The shift is from accomplishing to trying, while accepting that outcomes are mostly defined by factors outside your control. What Dostoevsky understood from his brush with death: life itself is precious beyond measure, not life as it should be, not life once you've achieved your goals, life as it actually is right now with all its imperfections. Stop asking what is the meaning of life. The question itself is the problem. The meaning is in the living. Everything else is elaborate avoidance. Lesson number 6. Your guilt already knows what you've done, and it won't stop until you confess. Raskolnikov's official punishment is 8 years of penal servitude. But that's not what destroys him. The real punishment is psychological torment beginning the moment he commits murder, and not stopping until he confesses in Part 6, Chapter 8 of Crime and Punishment. The prison of his own mind is infinitely worse than any physical cell. Now watch what happens when this belief meets reality. Moral corruption goes against human nature, and human nature punishes the transgression through inner torment, regardless of external consequences. You can escape the law. You cannot escape yourself. Think about something you've done that you know was wrong. Even if no one found out, even if there were no consequences, you know. And that knowing corrodes you from inside. Your conscience isn't punishing you out of cruelty. It's trying to keep you human. You're carrying guilt right now. Maybe you betrayed someone's trust. Maybe you lied to get ahead. Maybe you hurt someone and never apologized because apologizing would cost you something. You tell yourself it doesn't matter because no one knows. But you know, and you have to live inside a mind that knows. How many times this week did you do something that made you feel slightly dirty? How many small betrayals did you commit against your own values? How many times did you choose convenience over integrity and tell yourself it didn't count? You've become the kind of person you wouldn't trust, and now you have to be that person 24/7. That's not punishment. That's hell. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self that the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, doesn't disappear when ignored. It grows stronger. Your unacknowledged guilt is your shadow demanding integration, and it will torment you until you face it. When Raskolnikov finally embraces moral virtue, he finds peace of mind, composure, and meaning, everything absent before. His confession has obvious negative consequences, but it's also what liberates him from torment. Dostoevsky believed that if he has a conscience, he will suffer for his mistake, and that will be his punishment, as well as the prison. This is where everything breaks down. Remaining virtuous and just isn't about avoiding external punishment. It's about remaining psychologically whole. When you betray your own moral code, when you hurt others for personal gain, when you lie to get ahead, the consequences aren't always obvious, but they're absolutely certain. Those who remain virtuous stay unfettered and peaceful even in dire circumstances. But if you've strayed into moral corruption, there's always a way back. It requires courage, determination, willingness to change. It might require confession and facing consequences, but it's possible, even for someone as corrupted as Raskolnikov. Your conscience isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that remembers who you actually are underneath all the justifications and rationalizations. When was the last time you apologized, not because you got caught, but because you were actually sorry? Lesson number 7. The evil you think you'd never commit is already dormant inside you. In Notes from the Underground, Dostoevsky confronts something most people refuse to acknowledge. Evil isn't something only monsters possess. It's present in all of us, manifesting through addiction, self-torment, pride, ignorance, countless other forms. Exposed to misery caused by human hands in Tsarist Russia, Dostoevsky reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Evil is a dormant gene in human nature, awakened when you stray from moral virtue. The default state of human beings is actually corruption and evil, and this is the part you won't want to hear. You're not naturally good. Goodness is something you must choose again and again against your nature's easier path. To become or remain a good person means actively suppressing the desire to wrong others, to act unethically, to pursue only your own interests. Think about the small cruelties you've already committed this week, the person you were unnecessarily harsh to because you were in a bad mood, the gossip you spread to make yourself feel superior, the advantage you took because you could, the lie you told because truth was inconvenient. These aren't exceptions to your good nature. They're glimpses of what you're capable of when you stop actively choosing otherwise. You want to believe you'd never do the terrible things others do. But Dostoevsky saw ordinary people, people exactly like you, commit atrocities when circumstances aligned. You're not special. You're not immune. The capacity for evil isn't something only bad people possess. How many times today did you choose the selfish option because no one was watching? How many times did you hurt someone and rationalize it as necessary? How many small evils did you commit that you've already forgotten? This connects to Jung's shadow work in Man and his symbols. The shadow contains not just rejected positive qualities, but also the capacity for evil we refuse to acknowledge. Integration doesn't mean acting on those impulses. It means recognizing they exist so you can consciously choose otherwise. Compassion and empathy aren't natural states. They're moral virtues representing salvation from the evil embedded in human nature. They're not easy defaults. They're hard-won victories over your worst impulses. Dostoevsky wrote that he will not and cannot believe that evil is the normal condition of mankind. This is where everything breaks down. Being good means waging constant war against your inherent inclination towards selfishness and cruelty. It will always be easier to be judgmental than respectful, ignorant than compassionate, hateful than loving. The path of least resistance leads downward. Remaining on the path of moral virtue means constantly reminding yourself to do the right thing. It means never letting yourself slip into autopilot, because autopilot leads to evil. The more aware you remain of the problem of evil in human nature, including your own, the better your chances of being different. You're not one of the good ones. You're someone who chooses good over evil again and again, knowing the evil option is always available and often easier. That's what actual morality looks like. Not inherent goodness, but conscious, continuous choice. Lesson number 8. The freedom you want would turn you into the monster you fear. In Book 5, Chapter 4 of the Brothers, Karamazov, the skeptic, even argues that God's role is primarily establishing a basis for moral order. Believe in a deity who punishes evil and rewards virtue, and you have an external reason to behave morally, something preventing fundamental evil from taking over. But Ivan's purely logical, rational rejection of God leads him to inner torment and despair that cripples him. Why? Because in divine moral regulation's absence, that external constraint disappears. Everything becomes permitted. Humans assume God's role themselves. Dostoevsky explored the idea that if there is no God, everything is permitted. Now watch what happens when this belief meets reality. You think you want total freedom, no rules, no constraints, no moral obligations holding you back. But that freedom would turn you into a monster, or make you the victim of monsters. Probably both. Think about what you'd do if you were certain you'd never face consequences. Would you remain exactly who you are? Or would lack of external constraints reveal urges you usually suppress? Be honest. That's the question Dostoevsky is asking. You're already doing this in small ways. You're rude to service workers because you'll never see them again. You ghost people who care about you because there's no social penalty. You take credit for others' work when you can get away with it. You lie to your partner about small things because the truth is inconvenient. These aren't exceptions. They're experiments in freedom without constraint. And they're revealing who you become when accountability disappears. Society tells you that rules are oppressive and freedom is liberation. Society is lying to you. The libertine fantasy of absolute freedom, doing whatever you want without constraint, is actually the fastest path to becoming someone you despise. This connects to Schopenhauer's philosophy in On the Basis of Morality. Without external moral framework, the will to power becomes the only principle, and the will to power in its pure form is precisely what we call evil. Dostoevsky remained a believer until death, but the lesson isn't about requiring everyone to become religious. Rather, you need some moral compass, spirituality, philosophy, personal code, allowing you to be free without being tempted to restrict others' freedom. This is where everything breaks down. Freedom can never be absolute. Without limitations or a system enforcing those limitations, the risk of trampling others' freedom or descending into moral corruption is always present. For all people to have and enjoy freedom, constraints must exist. The question isn't whether you'll be constrained, you will be. The question is what constrains you, external force or internal choice, divine judgment or personal integrity, social pressure or genuine virtue. Choose your constraint wisely because you will be constrained. The only question is whether you choose the constraints or they choose you. Without good and evil, there can never be virtue. Without virtue, there can never be meaning. Lesson number 9. Your loneliness is self-imposed, and compassion is the only way out. Before murdering the pawnbroker, Raskolnikov considers himself above most of society, making it permissible, imperative even, for him to eliminate those who don't aid the world's development. Even Karamazov's skepticism leads to similar isolation in Book 5, Chapter 5 of the Brothers Karamazov. Both are trapped in a universe of cold reason and nihilism where nothing but the self matters. You're doing this right now. You've convinced yourself that needing others is weakness, that self-sufficiency is strength, that maintaining emotional distance protects you from hurt. But here's where everything you believe breaks down. What you call strength is actually a cage you built for yourself. What you call protection is actually slow suffocation. Think about your relationships. How many people actually know you? Not the version you perform, not the persona you maintain, the real you with all your fears and contradictions and needs. Probably none, because you've decided that vulnerability is weakness and connection is risk. You ghost people the moment they ask how you're really doing. You keep every relationship at arm's length. You pride yourself on not needing anyone while dying inside from isolation. You reject intimacy before it can reject you. How many times this month did you choose isolation over vulnerability? How many times did you refuse to let someone care about you because caring opens you to pain? How many times did you maintain emotional distance to avoid being hurt? Every time you choose isolation over vulnerability, you're trading connection for the illusion of control. Every time you refuse to care because caring opens you to pain, you're choosing a life that's safe but hollow. Jung wrote in The Undiscovered Self that individuation, becoming whole, requires relationship with others. You cannot become yourself in isolation. The shadow must be integrated through connection, not avoided through withdrawal. Dostoevsky offers the same cure in all his works: compassion and love. Not as abstract ideals, but as the actual solution to alienation and meaninglessness. Even though we're free to define life's meaning for ourselves, love and care for others are universally virtuous values. Alienation isn't just about not making connections, it's about being unable to formulate meaning at all. When you lack regard and compassion for others, you're left in a solitary universe where nothing beyond yourself matters. And a universe where only you matter is a universe devoid of meaning. Both Raskolnikov and Ivan discovered that by loving and being compassionate, there's more to life than the self. This expansion of worldview, from self to other, from isolation to connection, allowed them to find peace and meaning at last. Dostoevsky believed that compassion is the chief law of human existence. This is where everything breaks down. In reality, nobody knows why we're here or what grand purpose life has. We're all in the same boat, each searching for our own meaning. Togetherness and closeness to others is the only certainty we have in an uncertain universe. Your intellectual superiority, your emotional independence, your carefully maintained boundaries, they're all elaborate defenses against the vulnerability that connection requires. And those defenses are killing you. You can be right and rational and superior and utterly alone. Or you can be vulnerable and compassionate and connected and actually alive. One path leads to winning arguments in an empty room, the other to a life that feels like something. Lesson number 10. Your suffering isn't the problem, your resistance to it is. Dostoevsky's entire life revolved around misery and suffering. From Siberian labor camps to his character's tragic evolution, suffering appears as a constant element, and here's what he concluded: suffering is and will always be part of the human experience. Not sometimes, not for some people, always, for everyone. Whether you're a philosophy student who commits murder, a skeptic struggling with doubt, or a prisoner in a labor camp, suffering is something you must confront. There's no escaping it. And this is the part you won't want to hear. Dostoevsky encourages us to do something radical. Enjoy suffering as part of the experience of life. Your brain just rejected that. But stay with me. Suffering, through pain, torment, misery, poverty, is an experience that makes you feel alive. It creates an unknowingly powerful desire to keep living. Dostoevsky's realization, after being spared by the Tsar, life itself is the meaning of life. If that includes suffering, so be it. Think about your life right now. Things don't go according to plan. You battle depression, grief, sorrow, pain, misery. You're scrolling through everyone else's highlight reels while drowning in your own reality. You're exhausted from pretending everything's fine when it's not. For most people, this becomes a reason to give up, to become bitter, to conclude life isn't worth it. Dostoevsky says the opposite. This is reason to rejoice in the fact that you're human enough to experience such feelings. Without suffering, you couldn't tell any emotion apart. There would be nothing to compare joy against. Without moments of suffering, you wouldn't truly enjoy moments of happiness and peace. Contrast is what makes experience meaningful. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll be happy when the suffering stops"? But the suffering never stops. It just changes form. You're waiting for a version of life that doesn't exist while missing the version you have. This connects to Marcus Aurelius's philosophy in Book 4 of Meditations. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Your suffering isn't the problem. Your relationship with suffering is. Suffering itself gives birth to something more powerful, hope. You must always hope that suffering will give way to pleasure, that things will get better, that pain is temporary, just as happiness is temporary. Everything passes, nothing lasts, including this. Dostoevsky wrote that pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The really great men must, he thought, have great sadness on earth. This is where everything breaks down. Stop resisting suffering and start integrating it. Your pain isn't separate from your life. It's part of your life. Your struggles aren't interruptions to your journey. They are the journey. Your suffering isn't something wrong that needs fixing. It's something real that needs accepting. This doesn't mean becoming passive or embracing victimhood. It means recognizing that every human life contains immense suffering, and the question isn't whether you'll suffer, but how you'll relate to that suffering. To hate suffering means to hate a large part of the human experience, which is the same as failing to find meaning in life. But if you learn to enjoy suffering, to treat it as another stepping stone rather than an obstacle, everything becomes workable. The people who suffer most aren't those who experience the most pain. They're those who resist that pain most strongly, who spend their energy fighting reality rather than accepting it. The ones who suffer least aren't those whose lives are easiest. They're those who've learned to stop demanding life be different than it is. Your suffering is making you more human, not less, more alive, not more dead, more real, not more broken. But only if you stop treating it as an intruder and start recognizing it as an essential part of what makes you capable of depth, meaning, and genuine joy. All shall be well, and all shall be worth it in the end, not because the suffering stops, but because you stop fighting it and start living through it instead. If these brutal truths from Dostoevsky disturbed something in you that needed disturbing, check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist. For more videos using ancient philosophical wisdom to help you find actual freedom in a world designed to keep you comfortable and controlled, hit subscribe, because the truth won't comfort you, but it might finally set you free.